towards the Gippsland Shires.
Yeah.
Aiming towards that corner scope.
Welcome everybody to our Ordinary Council meeting, Tuesday the 6th of March 2018. A special welcome to members of the Bairnsdale Venturers present here tonight, aiming towards their Queen Scout medallions. Kieran Dwyer, Will Franks and Angus Franks, welcome. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting to enhance the accessibility of the meetings to the broader East Gippsland community. These recordings are also archived and available for viewing by the public or used for publicity or information purposes. At the appropriate times during the meeting, any members of the gallery who are addressing the council will have their image, comments or submissions recorded. Please ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or on silent mode for the duration of the meeting. On behalf of the Council, I'd like to acknowledge the Gunai-Kurnai people, the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered, and pay our respects to their elders, both past and present. Item 1.2, Mr CEO, any apologies?
No, Mr Mayor.
Item 1.3 is declaration of conflicts of interest.
It's been nil declared, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Item 1.4 is a confirmation of the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting held on Tuesday the 6th of February 2018 be confirmed. Has been moved by Councillor Mark Reeves, seconded by Councillor Dick Ellis. Any questions? All those in favour? Thank you. The next meeting is our Ordinary Council meetings, and this is one of our special meetings where we're moving outside of the corporate office here in Bairnsdale, and it's going to be held on Tuesday the 3rd of April 2018 to be held at the Omeo Service Centre, 179 Day Avenue, commencing at 1 p.m. Item 1.6, request for leave of absence.
There's been one received from Councillor John White from the 27th of April 2018 to the 20th of May 2018.
Moved Councillor Pell, seconded Councillor Toohey. Any questions? All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Item 1.7, Mr CEO, is public question time.
There's been two public questions received from Morris Borgelt. Mr Borgelt, would you like to come forward to read those questions out? Mr Borgelt, you are requested you read the question, not deviate from the question. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I did send these questions through before about 1 o'clock, and it seems you only received them since I got here. Any particular one you want read first?
Your choice.
Well, there we go. Council misinformation re the Good Neighbour Code of Practice for the Lakes Entrance Christmas Carnival. At the September 5 Council meeting, Council stated that the only exceptions granted to the Good Neighbour Code of Practice was the number of days the operation and 1 hour extra for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Additionally, a letter from the Mayor stated officers had investigated and concluded the Good Neighbour Code of Practice had been adhered to except for the 2 1-hour exemptions over the New Year. At the 12th December meeting, I alluded to the poorness of the investigation's conclusions and sought confirmation that these were the only exemptions for this year's carnival. This was duly confirmed. Imagine my surprise when next morning, reading the Shire notice board in that day's Lakes Post, I read that extended hours were being added to the Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays. Considering the print deadlines, these additional exemptions had to have been granted well before the meeting, meaning the answer was seriously inaccurate. This also means the operator has not complied with this section of the Good Neighbour Code of Practice for the last 5 years. How come Council's answer was so inaccurate? Considering there are more obvious non-compliances with the Good Neighbour Code of Practice, how come the officer's investigation was so poor.
Mr Holton, would you like to reply to that question?
Well, I will reply in saying that I've just heard the question then, and I think it's quite a complex series of questions that Mr Borgelt is answering, and I would want to just say, well, I will answer those questions on notice in writing within the next few days.
Thank you, Mr Holton. Mr Borgelt, would you like to read out your next question, please?
As I said, I gave you 5 hours warning of these questions, so I'm sort of wondering whether the system's broken down, that your email system or feedback can't handle us sending in.
I'm not sure,
the
Mr
questions
Borgelt.
early.
You've got the opportunity to read out your question. Please read it out.
Okay, let's go. The local law's mooring time overstays. Over the last few months, I have noticed the yacht, Atoli ME171, which is a Meetung number, moored unattended on various public jetties, including Council's Chinaman Creek Jetty, for extended periods of time. It has presently been moored on the Meetung Yacht Club public jetty for over 2 weeks. The jetty being unpainted means it is a maximum mooring time of 48 hours. Under Council's new local laws, it could have been towed away after 48 hours without any notice given. Is the reason it hasn't been towed away that it reportedly belongs to Council's Director of Development, Paul Holton? Mr Holton has spent much time defending time limits for Council's jetties, particularly Chinaman's Creek, indicating that Council could be generous in urgent cases by extending time limits by a few days only. See question time 12 November 2017. Why is this boat owner allowed to continue to breach Council's local laws?
Thank you, Mr Borgelt. Mr Holton, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'm very happy to respond to that question, Mayor. The jetty in question, where, yes, indeed, my boat is currently located, is within the marina, Meetung Marina. It is unrestricted on that particular jetty at this point in time. The reason it is there, and I advise Council's Marina Officer of the case, is that it is requiring repairs which has rendered it inoperable, and it cannot be moved to the swing mooring, which I have in the middle of Bancroft Bay. As soon as the repairs are effected, the boat will be removed back to its swing mooring, and it's a situation I'd prefer the boat not to be in, but I went through the appropriate notification periods. It is an extended period of time, and it's not what I would prefer.
Thank you, Mr Holton. Item 1.8.1, Assembly of Councillors. The meeting held February 2018. Moved Councillor Pearls. We have a seconder. Councillor O'Connell, thank you. Any questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Item 1.9.1 is petitions requesting speed reduction, Birrells Road and Lake Victoria Road, Newlands Arm. Mr Waits, would you like to speak on that report?
Thank you, councillors. Yes, we've received a petition from residents of Newlands Arm State requesting a speed zone reduction to an 80km/h zone along Birrells Road and Lake Victoria Road in Newlands Arm, Horse Creek area. This is the third or fourth such request, and over previous requests that have been passed through the Vic Roads review process have been unsuccessful, and there's been no material change since those previous requests to suggest that we would be any more successful in enforcing or being able to introduce a speed reduction on those two roads. There's only been 2 accidents in the last 5 years, one on each of those roads. Neither of them, as I understand, particularly significant, one being driver error, the second when a vehicle left the road and hit an object. Saying that, we're more than happy to review the signage that's there to make sure that the signage is appropriate for the 100km/h So we'll look at the potential for some form of intersection improvement there, which I think would be one of the biggest concerns for these residents. The recommendation in front of you obviously is to look at the speed signage, to review that, and we'll also go back to Victoria Police again and get them to do some enforcement, both the speed limit but also the non-conformance with the stop sign at that location, Council.
Thank you, Mr Waite. Councillors, you've read the report, you've heard from Mr Waite. Are there any questions? Councillor Toohey.
Chris, is it possible for us to put some rumble strips on that intersection, particularly running up to the stop sign? I know there's an intersection out at Lindenau, major intersection there, 100-kilometre intersection. Is that the sort of treatment that we could put in there fairly easily?
Councillor, we can certainly look at that. Rumble strips aren't always particularly well supported, especially by those who live right on those intersections. We've got a couple of houses right on the intersection. So we always had a lot of reluctance to put them in those sort of locations where those houses are close, because there's a lot of vehicle noise as they go over them. I think that the biggest thing here is to look at that intersection and what more significant changes could be made to make it safe.
Any other questions, councillors? There's a recommendation before you. Do I have a motion? Moved Councillor Reeves. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pels. Speakers.
I'll speak to it quickly. Just given the matter that it's not being recommended to have a speed reduction, I'm happy to raise this at the East Gippsland Shire Road Safety Traffic Advisory Committee and alert our Vic Pol officers and Vic Roads as well to see if there's an opportunity for some enforcement and education around that particular area.
Thanks, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Pels.
I'd also like to add, we've had a number of speed reductions come from our communities to council, and maybe it's now time that we need to work with them in the best interest of safety in our communities. I think we need to find the right sources, and I'm surprised that this isn't that this won't be recommended to go through, but it doesn't say that we're not going to keep working in the anticipation of best practice for our community. We'll still keep knocking on doors. I'll have a chat with the Vic Roads guys direct and see what else comes up. But I did say to Chris earlier, there's a funding source there for all Vic Roads at the moment for speed reductions. And Chris has had a look, and Mark will be looking into that too. So hopefully we'll be able to come up with something. But at this stage, it's not to say just because we're accepting this, it doesn't mean that we're not still working on it. We still will be working on it behind the scenes, just so that our community knows.
Thank you, Councillor Pels. Any other speakers on this particular matter? Councillor Ellis.
I'd like to speak against the motion, Mr Mayor. I believe that 79 signatures to a petition on road safety from a community of 300 is not insignificant, and just due to the fact that there has only been 2 recorded motor vehicle accidents over a 5-year period doesn't reduce the propensity for danger on the roads. If the matter had not been of a concern to the residents that use that on a regular basis, and I'm a person that doesn't use those roads, I believe that there is some justification for Vic Roads to take the action and assess the petition and its content. I believe that because it's been knocked back before, doesn't necessarily give the argument strength that we shouldn't bring it to the attention, the petition to the attention of Vic Roads, who aren't a specialist in this matter, and leave it with them as the roads authority to make a decision on the matter. I cannot support the motion as it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ellis. Any other speakers? No further speakers. I'll ask the mover of the motion to reply.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Ellis. While your words are noted and partially agreed with, 79 is not more than half people's more than half, then I'd be starting to pay attention. However, councillors, you need to be reassured that the Road Safety Advisory Committee, VicPol and VicRoads use what we call a safe systems approach. And, there's 4 tranches to that: safer speeds, safer vehicles, safer drivers, and safer roads. And there is a system around this about driver education, about car improvements, about roadside architecture, improving road quality to make them appropriate. So we just need to be mindful we don't take an ad hoc approach in this matter, and the advisory committee will take on board what you've said, Councillor Ellis, and the members of the community who have raised the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's 7 for, 2 against. Motion's carried. Item 2, notices of motion and/or rescission of motions.
Nil received, Mr Mayor.
Item 3 is deferred business.
The Eagle Point Planning Scheme Amendment C126, implementation of the Paynesville Maritime Precinct Master Plan. Report will be presented to a future council meeting. I think it should be noted that we did have a meeting last week regarding this matter with people that were for and against, and I think it was a very constructive meeting for council, which will help a future decision. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Item 4 is councillors' report. I'd like to set the scene this week in relation to more around why we do things and why we get out rather than what we've been doing. As, each month we table our reports which are there for public to inspect at any time. But I'd like to start by talking about health and wellbeing and how we need to really look after each other in our community. Earlier this year there was a national outpouring of emotion and grief on the news that Dolly, Amy Jane Everett, sadly took her life at the age of 14. This tragic death brought about by bullying shocked our nation. Dolly was well known to our nation as she was the face of Akubra. In response to this tragic death, Dolly's Dream Foundation has now been established. The Dolly's Dream Foundation is a charity group established by family and friends of Dolly Everett. Dolly was a victim of bullying and ended her own life at age 14. Yeah, I just still find that really hard to contemplate. In remembrance of Dolly and to facilitate positive change for other young lives, the Dolly Foundation aims to provide support to charity groups through their fundraising and promotion. Now, sometimes these issues seem so big that we don't know how to deal with them or how to start. And a young lady, a young business lady in our community right here, Carly Knight, decided that her business could not only assist with donating to the foundation, but also create awareness about bullying and talking about it and starting that conversation. So for you that are not sure what she actually did, Carly decided that her business would embroider a blue shirt and on it would have the wording, "Do it for Dolly." Carly Knight's initiative to raise funds for the Dolly Dream Foundation has resulted in over 700 orders from all over Australia for this unique shirt, embroidered with the "Do It For Dolly" hashtag, which aims to spread awareness of teenage bullying. Carly said Dolly was a young country girl who loved horses and horse riding. Carly said she had a strong connection with Dolly and enjoyed doing those sorts of things in her life growing up in the country, being surrounded by horses and other animals, and I just wanted to do something practical to raise awareness of bullying, anxiety, depression and youth suicide. In just 1 month, Carly's initiative has raised $10,500 for the foundation. But just as important, Carly's initiative, in just 1 month, Carly's initiative has raised $10,500 for the foundation. But just as important, Carly's initiative has raised local awareness around the bullying and other mental health issues. And with your indulgence, councillors, I'd like to show you one of the shirts that I purchased. Interesting, on the back of the shirt it says hashtag speak even if your voice shakes, hashtag stop bullying now, and hashtag do what you're told. Thank you, Councillor Toohey.
By contrast, mine's fairly mundane. I attended 4 different functions during the course of the last month. The one I would like to speak about was a business breakfast at East Gippsland News, which was very interesting to see behind the scenes something that's I know is a staple in my life every Friday. Reading the local newspaper, and it, as I say, was very entertaining to see that from an inside perspective. They've been there for over 100 years, owned continuously by the Yates family, and the changes they explain some of the changes that business has been through over 100 years. And you can imagine that it started off as a fairly simple operation, from using hot metal production, what they've referred to as hot metal production to produce newspapers, down to nowadays using obviously computers and computer-to-plate technology. Sorry, I don't even understand some of these terms, and digital imaging today. So it was very, very interesting to actually see the print presses running and actually printing off that day's newspaper that we read once it was produced. So a very good event for me to attend, particularly with other businesses or business owners, and to speak to them about the issues that they see and face every day. So it was well worth attending. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor O'Connell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I've been working on a few things in the last month, but one of the things that I want to talk about tonight is some work that I've been doing with a group of committed and passionate Omeo residents who have formed with the concept of retaining the Omeo CWA Hall, which was also the former kindergarten. The CWA is a really historic building, and probably not many know that it was built in 1873 and was the original Catholic church in Omeo, which was built during busy times, and it was built to handle the capacity of the growing population. In recent times, over the last 40 years, it's been used as the kindergarten, but a new facility has since been built in town, and the CWA hall is now empty. So the group have formed with the concept that would create and develop a community hub or centre which utilises this historic building, and by preserving and maintaining this building in public hands, it's then able to be used by all in the community for a range of activities. The community group have been liaising with the local CWA branch in regards to the proposal, and a number of other organisations in support of this proposal. It's extremely important to preserve our heritage buildings, not only as a reminder to our future generations, but also currently of the historic value of the life and times of our past in our high country town. I've been working on a few other things, but they're in my written report, which will be sent through. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Connell. Councillor Reeves.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Mr Mayor and councillors, members of the gallery. It's nice to hear about Omeo Kindergarten and the hall, the CWA hall. My children went to kindergarten there, and for a while I was treasurer of that kindergarten, believe it or not. My report is submitted, but I'd like to raise one point, and this is not so much what has happened, but what will happen on Thursday. Thursday is International Women's Day. So what's International Women's Day, and why is it important? So I'm glad that you mentioned the whys around our reports, Mr Mayor. Well, why is it important we stop and pay homage? May we all be reminded of the importance of civil awareness around International Women's Day. May we all be reminded about women and girls' equality, about anti-sexism, about anti-discrimination, and about the elimination of misogyny among other things. Now, some people call those things being PC or politically correct. But as the father of a young woman who I know will be a leader, and as a principal of a school with 50% population girls, I want their lives to be free of these impediments that they do say exist now. I'd like to see a time when we don't have to have women leaders, we have leaders. And I'd like to see a time when women CEOs' percentage isn't 26% in Australia, but it's 50% or more. And if that's being PC, well, bring it on. I'm a subscriber to it. So with those words, 8th of March, this Thursday, International Women's Day. Stop and think for a moment why it's important. Thanks, councillors.
Thanks, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Something really brief from me. Most of my points have been emailed already, but I would like to mention that I had the chance to visit the proposed Glenullerdale Mineral Sands mine site the other week, and I know a lot of other councillors have already been out there, but that's the first time I'd made it out after a bit of trouble finding each other. I managed to meet up with some people, and it was a really valuable experience to gain a boots-on-the-ground approach at the proposed site and to gain a first-hand understanding of the land and terrain, and I know it definitely opened my eyes a lot to the situation and provided insight, and it's just something that you can't get from looking at satellite pictures. And so if anybody in the community hasn't been out there to have a look, I found it really eye-opening, and I've taken a lot away from it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I went to Dargo last Sunday with the Omeo Historical Society group for a late Christmas party, as the Dargo Historical Society had a delay in spending their grant money. I don't mean for 1 minute that we use the grant money for the Christmas party, mind you. The kindred historical societies are Dargo, Omeo, Harriettville and Mount Beauty that concurrently host an annual party. Dargo have done a splendid job with their historical interests, and also this is not to do with the historical society so much, but I'd like to add the hall and neighbourhood house and even the unisex toilets are being kept in a very good condition. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep my report to business of council. I felt as if there was an election in the air in the last speeches, but that was good. That was good. Just a couple of matters I'll mention. I'd like to promote. Yeah. Right. Okay. During February, I attended a number of events, including the float activities, and experienced the most enjoyable visit to the Lake Tyers Beach House. Again, I think congratulations should go to Andrea Lane and all of those associated with the float projects. Travelling in company with the Mayor, Councillors White and Peltz and the CEO to Busselton, Western Australia, where we inspected numerous sites associated with the sand mining industry, and in addition to those inspections, we took part in a number of discussions in relation to local government matters associated with coastal councils. I had the fortune to attend the launch and premiere of the promotional film Secrets from the Malakuta Bunker with members of the Malakuta Historical Society. So Councillor Buckley and I have enjoyed the company of those people, those sorts of people. And I have further met with a number of Malakuta citizens in relation to a series of issues associated with their community. I have a written report which I'll lodge, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ellis. Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things from me. Mainly the visit to West Australia, which was most beneficial. We were spoken to by many in the sand mining industry, and also the locals who have had involvement or have been directly affected or related to the sand mining. It was, I think it was a well worthwhile while. One of the eye-openers was to just be at Bustleton and see what a wonderful shire they have there, and the things that they've opened up in the last few years to benefit themselves and the population. Also, just earlier, we had our quarterly audit committee meeting, and something that was most enjoyable the other evening was to go for cruise on the Lady Nelson that's come across from Tasmania, but it was partly cruise and partly sailing. The motor was running, well, we didn't have much wind to work with, and then they put the sails up for the trip back, but it was a very, very enjoyable evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Pels.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got a rather lengthy one because I have had a lot of portfolio interest this month, and I feel like I'm the road runner by name and terminology, but just touching on Mark's comments about females in leadership, I'm looking forward to Thursday. I've accepted a Vic Forest invitation to go and talk to the ladies down there, and I just wanted to remind all you men, you wouldn't be here unless us ladies made you here. So I just thought I'd throw that in for a comment here.
That's a little, isn't that sexist?
Sorry, I'm only stirring you all. Anyway, wanted to make you feel like a part of it. Anyway, the summer period has continued to be a busy period for us councillors, with a lot of background work happening behind the scenes for the year ahead. The trip to Bustleton in WA was well worth its while, giving those who participated a better understanding of how these big mineral sands mining companies operate. From my basic perspective, the decision is all up to the Minister. And if they get the go-ahead, it is then up to the mining company and the farmers to negotiate an appropriate, satisfactory outcome for the owners and themselves. Council's only role is to assess wear and tear on the road infrastructure and settle any community issues which may arrive. The mineral sands in the area of WA, which we visited, has been operating for close to 50 years, and it is a big part of their everyday life. So, with that in mind, I thought it was a really interesting perspective to have been out to Glen Allerdale, to be amongst the people out there, to see where it's going to be and to hear their voice, and then to travel over to WA and then hear the other side of it and view the other side of it. The whole perspective comes together. So it also followed on with a bit of information from the seats meeting, which I'll now talk about. Our quarterly seats meeting was held in Inverloch this time, with some very interesting presentations from Nick Murray from Ports, Victoria, and about Barry's Beach, and another presentation from Michael Knowles and Lettice Grundy from Cube Logistics, who actually spoke about Cube Logistics, who have purchased the old SO land at Barry's Beach down in Block down there, down in the South Gippsland area. Now, Cube Logistics actually manages the port in Bunbury, where all the mineral sands are exported out of. They actually gave us a presentation on these cubes that they actually specifically make for transporting environmentally, they say, contaminous goods. So they put the products straight into these containers, which are put onto a lug. They're fully enclosed. They're taken to the port. They're dropped completely, opened up and spilt into the hull of the ship, and then they're closed again. So there's no need or no area of contamination whatsoever. And it closed the logistical side for me, that everything was being addressed. There'd be no area for particles to be escaping from the transport side. So I thought that was quite interesting to see. Mark Burnett is retiring from his role on Seats as the Treasurer, and the role has been passed on to Shannon Little from La Trobe. And Seats has written a lovely thank you letter to Mark for his contribution to the role of Seats that he did. We also had presentations from John Ernest on Safety Freight Networks and Peter Francis on the Phillip Island Ferry project. They both had presentations that were very interesting, and I offered in jest to give them our ferry and told them that they actually didn't want another ferry because the last two actually, I remember when I was a child, they actually sank from Hastings to Phillip Island. So with that in mind, I then moved on to the MAV Transport and Infrastructure meeting, which was in Melbourne. We had just lost our Executive Officer, Kevin Peachy, who will be greatly missed for his tireless work on timber towns, as well as transport and infrastructure. And the rumour has it that Kevin's taken up a position in Canberra, and I'm not sure whether it's with doing policy stuff in the timber industry or whether it's with a timber industry position, but he'll be very comfortable up there with his background that he actually has. We had a presentation from Jeremy Handling, who is the Manager for Active Transport Victoria, and he presented on the Victorian Cycling Strategy 2018 to 28. And the comments were that only 17% of the population were likely to ride a bike. The perception by most is that it's too dangerous. But on the positive side, we had health benefits, less traffic congestion, and more education training is needed. Cycle lockers are also needed to be installed in main business areas for the safety of the bikes. Government was hoping that local councils would take up the lead role on this and encourage their communities to get involved. The comment around the table was that the report was disappointing for rural councils, as there was not a lot of inclusion about our areas in the report. And given the fact that it was sad that none of the $100 million TAC money was spent on bike safety initiatives, so we felt that we weren't included in that. But anyway, we told them that we were disappointed. We then had a presentation from Ashley Cook, who is the Manager for Regulatory Policy for Transport Victoria, and Julie Van Doit, who was the Principal Lawyer and Reform Division, who gave us a rundown on the workings that is behind the autonomous vehicles and the laws and regulations that will be needed will actually come from a federal government level. So Vic Roads will be in the position to grant a permit. Copies of these are the draft permits that they'll have here. So they'll actually, they're working on these, they're only draft copies, but Vic Roads will be in the position to grant a permit to a person or a corporation so as the vehicle can be used. The autonomous vehicle permit will be the regulatory format that the owner needs to abide by. They will also cover the insurance. Permits will be granted subject to conditions such as road and weather, and Vic Roads will licence key routes for companies to use. So that news with other councils, they said that they've been approached by companies in regards to flexi cars because they have those yellow bikes, the O-bikes in Melbourne, that they're having a lot of problems with. So the next grade up from the O-bike is the flexi car. So they are trying to cut down in car usage in Melbourne, so they're doing shared car usage where you can actually just have the app on your phone, scan the handle as such, and it'll open up the vehicle, you use it, and you'll drive it to the airport, leave it at the airport, someone will come along and they'll just scan theirs, and they'll take it back to the city or they'll take it to wherever they leave it. Another issue that some of the Melbourne councils are having a concern with is the next thing is dockless motorcycles or scooters, like in Singapore and all the Asian countries. So they've got companies knocking on their door wanting to drop all these vehicles on their doorstep, but the issue for them is to have some kind of memorandum of understanding in place that is suitable for them to actually activate them. They're finding there's a lot of urban issues with regards to where they're leaving them, they're just dumping them, and it's becoming quite a concern to councils. So I think that's sort of something that's of use to us. And then, here we keep going. Convoy for Kids was on, which was on Saturday, was a transport initiative which was held to raise money and funds for Kids for Cancer. They're only held every 4 years, and this year the money was going towards Camp Quality and Angel Flight. It consisted of trucks coming from the Trove Valley and trucks coming from the east. And they all met in Lakes Entrance and they had a big truck show. They did state there was probably in excess of 400 vehicles there, so if you're in the convoy and you're a car, They said that the drivers were very professional and courteous about letting you in and out of the convoy. Most people that I've come across have said it was quite a sight to see, coming down the highway, as it always is, and they fully enjoyed the spectacular of it all. And then on the Sunday we had the Bairnsdale Motorplex, and it was very busy on the weekend. It held a burnout day on Saturday, and on Sunday it had the truck drags. Both events were of interest. They had a lot of spectators, and the truck drags was the first time that they've been held in this venue ever. So that concludes my month, and I'm quite tired, I have to say, from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pels. Councillor Toohey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to add something to Marianne's seats report, which was an issue that South Gippsland have had with truck accidents, I think 2 years ago, where they had 30-odd milk or truck accidents, predominantly milk tankers, and by making some changes locally and including the drivers in creating those changes, the following year they had one accident. So I'd really like to commend them on the work that they've done, which was some information that come through seats, which I did attend for half a day with Marianne. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toohey. We'll certainly work on our councillor reports. I should have also said, apart from the why, we'll look at time limiting to 5 minutes, perhaps. Item 5 is officer reports, and 5.1.1 is a draft social media and media relations policy, and we have Mr Radford in attendance. Mr Radford, will you also be showing your...
video?
Yes.
No, a link has been distributed separately to councillors to view in their own time, but we could certainly look at that. It's having a few computer issues this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and good evening, councillors. This policy seeks to provide a framework for council and its relevant business units to provide information of interest to the community through both traditional and digital channels. Social media has become an important avenue for communications, customer service and engagement. It's critical for governments of all levels to adapt to this shift, and councillors would be well aware of our recent advances in this space. This policy is an important part of these advancements. Australians are some of the most prolific users of social media in the world, with around 60% of the population active Facebook users. People around the world are continuing to express their opinions freely towards government issues and announcements. Council does have an active Twitter account. It's got about 3,000 followers. We've also got an active YouTube channel, and we've also got quarantine accounts in Council's name on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, that we're keen to use and that we are resourced for. With Council keen to become more active in the social media space and the existing media relations policy due for review this year, it was considered appropriate for one policy to cover all media mediums, both traditional and digital. This approach is becoming more common across Victorian councils and as identified in our research and development of this document. The draft is based on a Department of Justice Victoria template, which is widely used across most Victorian government departments and has been adopted by a number of municipalities both in Victoria and interstate. Elements of the Municipal Association of Victoria's social media guidance template have also been incorporated into this document where further clarification was deemed required. The policy will provide everyone associated with this organisation with an understanding of who can create content and respond to traditional and digital media inquiries. The policy also makes clear expected online behaviour and that these behaviours are applicable to both work and personal social media use. The policy provides for an open, transparent and professional council presence on social media that adheres to the relevant legislation. It should also be noted that the policy not only provides a governance framework to guide us in the social media space, but it also achieves objectives as contained in the council plan. East Gippsland has connected, inclusive and vibrant communities. East Gippsland Shire Council is inclusive, engaged and open. East Gippsland Shire Council is a leading local government service provider, and we put the customer first and give each customer a great experience of council's services. Councillors, you've been provided with a copy of the draft policy and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr Radford. Councillors, we've had the report. We've heard from Mr Radford. Questions, councillors? There's no questions. We have a recommendation before us. We have a mover. Moved Councillor O'Connell, seconded Councillor White. Speakers.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say well done to David and his team. This has been a long time coming, so looking forward to seeing the social media sites go live and being able to promote what a great place it is to live, work and play in East Gippsland. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connell. Councillor White, would you like to add?
Yes, I'd just like to say well done, David, but could I please have somebody teach me how to do all these new things? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor White. Is there any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr Radford. Item 5.2.1 is an East Gippsland Planning Scheme Amendment C144. It's a corrections amendment, and we have Ms Nelson in attendance.
Mr Mayor, as stated, this planning scheme amendment is designed to correct errors and anomalies that we find in working with the planning scheme on a day-to-day basis. Periodically, we prepare an amendment that aims to have all of these errors addressed. They're errors that are able to be identified as factually incorrect. We're not looking at changing the scheme's intent. And you'll see in the documentation that we've identified quite a number of mapping anomalies where public land is incorrectly zoned as, private land is incorrectly zoned as public land. We're looking at removing some redundant requirements from land where a restructure overlay exists, and also correcting some incorrect references to maps and other documents in the planning scheme. In the case where changes that we're proposing can easily be identified as errors, the Planning and Environment Act allows this scheme to be changed without exhibition, and so you'll see in this recommendation that we're requesting the Minister for Planning to intervene and become the planning authority for this amendment and approve it without public exhibition, because it has the effect of correcting the scheme rather than changing it in any significant way. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms Nelson. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Buckley.
What does the F mean in FZ1?
Could you switch on your microphone? Thank you.
What does the F mean in FZ1? You know, you've got a PC, well, that'd be private. C something and R would be...
In that table, we have in the first instance where the abbreviation is used, spelled out. So the PCRZ is Public Conservation and Resource Zone. FZ1 is the Farming Zone Schedule 1. So it is spelled out there. We haven't put it out in full in every reference because there are obviously multiple properties affected.
No, most things like this, charts like this, have a little thing at the bottom somewhere says that this means that and this means the other thing. And I just wondered, what do you call it?
We did it differently to that. If you read from the top, it's spelled out in the first instance that it's used, and we haven't spelled it out through the rest of the text.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Are there any further questions? Do we have a recommendation? Do we have a mover? Moved Councillor Toohey, seconded Councillor Buckley. Speakers?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is just a procedural matter, and it should just go through without any issues, I would expect.
Thanks, Councillor Toohey. Did the seconder want to speak? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5.2.2 is East Gippsland Planning Scheme Amendment C139, Tambo Bluff and Newlands Arm. And again, Ms Kate Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's another planning scheme. This one is a different kind of proposal because we are actually looking at changing the scheme in a way that does require that the changes be exhibited so that anybody affected by it can make a submission to council. The amendment focuses on two what we call old and inappropriate subdivisions, so Tambo Bluff and Newlands Arm. They were subdivisions that were created many years ago without services and at a density of allotments that really meant that you couldn't sustainably develop those places. There's subsequently been an enormous amount of effort put in by East Gippsland Shire and previous shires with the aim of creating both Tambo Bluff and Newlands Arm townships in a way that is actually viable. The way that we do that is by requiring the pattern of subdivision and development to be controlled through the planning scheme, in particular through a restructure overlay. What this planning scheme amendment is aiming to do is reflect on some changes to the appropriate zoning and controls that exist. So once again, in this case, there is land that is inappropriately zoned or inappropriately has overlays over land. There is also a number of proposals where we believe that there is justification for a change to the pattern of consolidation of land that can be developed. And we're proposing that these changes are justified because they achieve a better outcome, a better development outcome as part of the overall layout of development at Tambo Bluff in particular. And finally, councillors that have been here for a while, you might recall that every now and then we come to you with an amendment to remove the restructure overlay from lots that have already been consolidated, because what that does is trigger unnecessary permit requirements. In fact, there was an example of this in the corrections amendment. What we're looking at doing is changing the approach with the mapping so that the final intent of the restructure plan is actually included in the planning scheme, rather than us editing it every time lots get consolidated and the pattern of subdivision changes. So it's an efficiency as well as a legibility change to the scheme. But very happy to answer questions. Sorry, in this case we do need to exhibit the planning scheme amendment. So we would seek authorisation from the Minister for Planning and then exhibit the planning scheme amendment, and it would then come back to council for further processes. And it is worth noting in this case that we have written to affected landowners where we can identify who they are to pre-advise them of the planning scheme amendment so that it's not a surprise to them.
Thank you, Ms Nelson. We've had the report, councillors. We've had an update here tonight. Questions? Councillor Tui.
Kate, I'm just apply public acquisition overlay schedule 4. Can you just explain to me what that means?
There are significant areas of land at Tambo Bluff that are unsuitable for development, and which as part of the restructure overlay have been identified for acquisition and inclusion in the public land asset base there, so it becomes part of the public open space. In those cases where there is a landowner who's identified as a landowner, then council would acquire that or assume it through other rate recovery processes. There are also parcels that council owns through past acquisitions or rate recovery processes which we sell. So in effect it's kind of a cost neutral process. But to acquire it, it's pretty usual to put an acquisition overlay on it so that it's identified for that purpose, and then acquisition processes can take place.
Any further questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Pels.
Ms Nelson, when you're looking at some of the block sizes, they're quite large, and I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, you know, they could be split into 2 house lots or 3 house lots as they are, and you're proposing to put them into one lot. And are you saying that are they doing that for a reason, for native tree vegetation value, or are they just not going to, they're going to be turned into parkland, or they've got, you know, a bit of a gully there or something? I'm not really sure why.
Are you looking in particular at 3 Brolga Grove and Jacaranda Drive there? Is
I'm
that
looking at page 148, and I'm not sure, it's saying lot 1 and lot 2.
Page 140, are you looking at the actual plan scheme amendment documentation?
Yes.
Well, there's been an enormous amount of work, without going to page 148, there's been an enormous amount of work put into, at both Newlands Arm and Tambo Blah, understanding what a developable parcel is, given the level of services that are actually provided there. In the council report, we go into a little bit of detail about land in Brolga Grove and Jacaranda Drive, and both the topography and the existence of native vegetation on some of those parcels really means that the land is undevelopable. So we've selected an area out of all of those lots, which does present a parcel of land that could logically be developed, which is in ultimately very similar density is approved or achieved to other lots in that island. So there's a bit of science. In this particular case, the original, not only are there topography and vegetation constraints, the land ownership pattern means it's almost impossible for the landowner to achieve the restructure outcome, and we don't think that it's a good outcome anyway, given the particular the way the land is structured.
Thank you, Ms Nelson. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor White.
Yes, Ms Nelson. So in consolidating these into park areas, you've got the full cooperation of the owners that you've been able to locate?
Not in respect to where we're looking to acquire land. We're basically saying there's an anomaly, we should be acquiring that land. In many cases, those landowners will not be able to be identified. They don't exist. You know, land that's been undevelopable there has pretty much been abandoned by many landowners. So we don't necessarily have their permission, but the whole purpose of the planning scheme amendment is to notify everybody that it's our intent to acquire that land. So it's a very public process that we go through to do that. The landowners that we have spoken to are the landowners that we know that we've been dealing with that have got quite specific issues around how they achieve a developable lot outcome that accords with the planning scheme. So we have spoken with those owners so that they understand what outcome they're aiming to achieve, not necessarily in respect to all of the parcels that we put an acquisition overlay on. But it's to ensure that we're actually being consistent with what the original restructure plan says for Tambo Blah. So it isn't new.
Councillor Pels.
I'm still not fully convinced about Jacaranda Drive, and I'm wondering why the hell it's been even put there if there's no houses. So lot number 2, is quite a big L shape, and there's a lot of trees on it. I'm looking now at page 25 of our notes, everyone, and then page 148 of our thing, and I'm sort of curious as to, yeah, if you could.
So the pattern we're proposing, you'll see the plan above the plan that shows lot 1 and lot 2, shows the current ownership layout.
Yeah.
Some of those owners are unable to be identified.
Yeah.
What we're saying is let's consolidate all of the lots in the L-shaped block, and we will ultimately acquire all of those for open space. So it's not a lot that is able to be developed, but lot 1, which results from the restructure, would be a saleable lot.
Councillor Tui, you had a question.
Kate, and as you know, I have an issue with us acquiring land that is of no value to us and the cost involved in maintaining that land. What is the net gain or the net increase in land that council's responsible for? I know you wouldn't know in regards to the cost of maintaining that, but have you any idea how much more land we will obtain through this process at all?
I don't believe, I mean, the council's intent to acquire land and to resell and all of those sort of things was established when council adopted the restructure plan for Tambo Bluff. So there was an acknowledgement at the time that undevelopable land would end up as part of the public land. I don't want to call it assets necessarily, but it would be part of what is owned by council on behalf of the public there. And in most cases, it connects with other more substantial areas of public open space there, and it's quite natural there. It's not manicured parks and open space. So you've got wetlands, you've got vegetated open space. There's quite a network of walking tracks through the estate so that you can actually get down to the beach and things like that. So it was a very conscious process that we went through. The preference is to have it as part of the public land holding rather than people sitting just on undevelopable land. So it was part of quite a long strategic process that we went through to identify what we would require.
Thank you. Councillor Powell, you had a follow-up question?
Yes, I have. I'm just questioning whether rates have been paid on these blocks that are being amalgamated and you can't find the owners. I'm wondering, there's a lot of outstanding debts from the Tambo Bluff set up, and I'm just wondering whether any of these come in that category that rates haven't been paid on.
Look, I don't know exactly the status of each of these parcels of land, but if we can't find the owners, then they won't be paying rates. Yeah. So ultimately what happens is that property can be recovered through proper legal processes for failure to pay rates over a certain period of time. Yeah. So it becomes, and that's how council has ended up as the owner of a lot of these parcels of land, because they're not able to be developed.
Councillor Tui, you had a follow-up question?
Sorry, Kate. So is some of that land? I'm assuming some of that land that we have taken control of through that process of people just abandoning it. Is some of that land sellable? And if that's the case, is that something that we will do?
Yes, so some parcels that we own are able to be sold, and sometimes they are the parcels, you know, we end up with a parcel that is the lot that somebody needs to make their particular restructure work. So yes, and we do actively do that. We do actively seek out and assist people to achieve the outcome that we are looking for. Having worked through this planning scheme amendment, and then Chris having delivered the services to the estate, I wouldn't recommend changing any of the restructure outcomes unless I thought there was a real justification to do it. Because if you start fiddling with it, you're never going to get the end product. Everyone will say, "Oh, I can't possibly achieve my outcome." So in these cases, I think they are justified because they achieve a better development outcome. In one case, we would have had a long, I'm going to say skinny, narrow lot. Now, two lots with, reasonable sized house sites. And in the other one, questionably developable land, preventing an outcome of a house being built now means that there can be a house built on a developable parcel. So we wouldn't come to you or put to the Minister a change unless we felt there really was justification to do it in respect to changing the way the restructure of lots worked here.
Well, councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Moved, Councillor Reeves, seconded Councillor Ellis. Speakers?
Look, I'm happy to speak for this. Tambo Bluff is the gift that seems to keep giving. 50 years this has been giving, and if anybody questions why we have systematic, organised, planning, strategic and statutory planning, this is the reason. So we don't have a legacy development like this one.
Thank Councillor Reeves. Councillor Ellis, would you like to add?
Spent a lot of time on this job and appreciate the complexities of the matter, and I'm happy to support Councillor Reeves' recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Ellis. Are there any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. Item 5.2.3 is a proposal to end Section 173 Agreement AG 845895P as it relates to Lot 60, Plan of Subdivision 616253 at 70 Angafora Drive, Malakuta. And in attendance we have Mr. Hollow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a proposal, as you advised, to enter Section 173 agreement. It arose in 2006-7 as a result of the subdivision of the land, and it arose because council was required to address certain requirements of the then scheme about native vegetation protection and fire protection. As we know, councillors, there's been a dramatic change in legislation, in particular with fire legislation within the planning scheme, and the agreement would actually preclude this residential block from being developed for the purposes of dwelling under the current provisions of the planning scheme. We've met with CFA officers, with Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning officers. We've met with the landowners, and we can only see that this is a reasonable request, and it will allow this lot to be developed for the purposes of the underlying zoning being residential, and therefore we've recommended to council that the agreement be ended as per the recommendation. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hollow. Questions, councillors? Moved Councillor Ellis, seconded Councillor Pels. Any speakers?
Just simply another correction in terms of appropriate planning. It's a matter that's been around, if you refer to your reports, for a number of years with council, and I look forward to a successful outcome. Thanks, Mr. Hollis. Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Pels.
I'd just like to say, it's good to see investment going into Malakuta and lots being made available for people to purchase. The town can now grow a bit further and getting things like this ironed out for them so that they can proceed is great. So thank you, Mr. Hollow.
Thank you, Councillor Pels. If there's no further speakers, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 5.3.1, appointment of councillor representatives. There's a schedule which shows the delegation of which committees councillors perform their duties on. And Mr. CEO, would you like to add any comments?
Mr. Mayor, this is really just administrative. We've councillors decided on committees they required no change, so we're just going through an administrative process here to ensure that everybody is there in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Do you have any questions? So the report has been moved by Councillor Toohey. Do we have a second to Councillor White? If there's no speakers, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried.
Councillor Roberts, I didn't change the program as requested.
Item 5.3.2 is a report on Audit Committee meeting held 27th of February 2018. Ms Bennett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, it's my pleasure to present a report on the quarterly meeting of the Audit Committee, as the Mayor said, which was the 27th of February. A great deal of good work was done through this committee, and overall the committee was very pleased on some of the traction that we're getting on some of our perhaps longer standing issues. In particular, I just wanted to highlight that Michael McStephen has been appointed chair for his 5th consecutive term, which I think is something of a record in audit committee parlance. Pleasingly, we had an internal audit report presented to us that indicated that sample testing of our accounts payable and procurement processes revealed no errors and no instances of non-compliance. We held back on partying a little bit because it was a sample size of 30, so we don't pretend that our processes are perfect. However, it was good to know that the internal auditor could not identify any immediate improvements to policies, procedures and processes. We also the committee received a report in respect of the Victorian Auditor General's results of 2016-17 audits of local government. And very pleasing, I think, for all of us and our citizens is the finding in respect of East Gippsland, which was that there are no significant concerns in regard to the short-term financial sustainability of council. It has to be good news in anyone's parlance. And also the committee was keen to highlight for council that there is going to be a continued focus on contract management. It's been identified as one of the internal audits that the committee would like to have undertaken in the first year of the new plan, and also that the expectation on officers, quite rightly, is that we continue to make a focus, careful monitoring and timely reporting of project budgets to head off overruns wherever possible, and where not possible to give timely advice to both the relevant project manager and councillors. I think those are the high notes, so I commend the report to you and the recommendation is before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bennett. Questions, councillors? Well, if there's no questions, have a mover for accepting the minutes. Moved Councillor Pels, seconded Councillor Toohey. Any speakers? Put the motion. Yes, Councillor Reeves.
Councillors and the very large gallery here should be reassured at how tenacious and assiduous the audit committee is. And as an observer, I was unfortunately gagged and unable to contribute, but it was important to have time spent there at that particular meeting, and I certainly urge all councillors to be at those audit committee meetings if you can get the time, invest the time. It's important to have that overview of what's going on and for council to be reassured that there is that body that is tenaciously and assiduously overviewing what's going on.
Is there any further speakers? I'll put the motion. Or did you want to speak, Councillor?
I was just going to congratulate the staff on implementing what we've been requesting.
Thanks, Councillor Pels. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. So item 5.3.3 is a property acquisition and lease to Coppercam Limited, 2 Gibbo Street, Benambra. And we have Ms Cashman in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I'm here today to present to you the report regarding the purchase of 2 Gibbo Street, Benambra, and the subsequent lease of that property to Coppercam Limited. So the Benambra school site located at 2 Gibbo Street was identified as surplus to the needs of the Department of Education, and subsequently that was handed to the Department of Treasury and Finance for sale. Coppercam Limited, who are the proponents of the Stockman Mine project, required a car park separate from the mine site to use as a transport interchange for workers in the mine. Council considered that this site was of benefit to the mine and lobbied for this site to be included in an amendment to the East Gippsland planning scheme, which was necessary to facilitate the development of the mine. This was successful and as such was earmarked for this purpose. Given this, under the first right of refusal process, Council had the opportunity to purchase this site at 50% of its market value based on the premise that the site would be used for community purposes. Officers of council put to the Department of Treasury and Finance a constructive argument in support of this, to which they agreed. This made the price of the site to council $90,000. It was important that, given that we were still in discussions with Coppercam Limited, that we had to firm up the lease agreement and key conditions of that lease so that the council wouldn't be disadvantaged financially. We didn't want to be left with a parcel of land that hadn't been tied to a firm lease agreement. As such, council officers undertook some negotiations with proponents of Coppercam Limited, and we were successful in obtaining an agreement whereby the purchase price of $90,000 would subsequently be repaid over time by way of capital improvements to the facilities on the site. The capital improvement plan is yet to be devised, but it will be identifying the modifications and refurbishments required on the site. And primarily we will be looking at identifying the urgent building works and addressing those promptly. So given the agreement between both parties and the lease conditions that were agreed to, council then notified the Department of Treasury and Finance of its intention to purchase the property for $90,000. So whilst there is this significant community aspect to this proposal, the actual rent of the property to a commercial entity means that we had to undertake a market rental valuation as well, and that's in accordance with our own policy. So in addition to the capital improvement plan whereby we will recoup the purchase price of the land, the site will also be generating some income for us, which is currently set at $5,500 per annum, including GST. The initial term of the lease is for 9 years, with 2 5-year options available to the lessee. So in accordance with Section 190 of the Local Government Act, we need to undertake a statutory public process to advertise the lease. So as such, I ask that Council consider the recommendation within the report, noting the purchase of 2 Gibbo Street and endorsing officers to undertake the statutory lease requirements and subject to the public submission process that's outlined. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms Cashman, for that update. Councillor Roberts, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just a little bit unsure as to why Coppercam would not just purchase the property for the market value of $180,000 when they're going to be paying more to lease it off council over 19 years.
I guess the advantage to them is that the site is already approved. If we were, so it's strategically important to them to have a site that has been approved for the purpose that they want to use it for. If the property was to go to the open market, they take the risk that they can't secure that, and so it was up to them to decide, and we forced them to purchase it. They believe this was advantageous to them to be able to secure the site in this way. For us, it means also that the site remains as a public asset in Canberra, and that there is continued community use there as well as the transport interchange. So there are two benefits, if you like, in this arrangement.
Councillor Roberts, you had a follow-up question?
The total revenue projected for the lease will equate to $195,400 over 19 years. So that's $105,400 inclusive of the agreed capital works that Coppercam were to undertake. So that's $105,400 above the initial purchase cost. Do you believe this will be adequate to get the site to a safe, workable condition, considering the condition of facilities? And can you compare the upkeep costs of similar facilities across the Shire?
Do I believe that $90,000 is sufficient to get the buildings up to scratch? Yes, I believe that we will be able to make them usable community buildings. We've been and inspected the site. They're perfectly usable at the moment. They don't meet current standards in respect to accessibility and things like that, but they're perfectly usable buildings. There are some structures on the site that aren't worth retaining or reusing. Community members might have different views about that. In respect to ongoing maintenance, the lease requirement will have the usual kind of requirements, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marianne or Kaya, they will have obligations to maintain the buildings. Well, yeah, I mean, it's the usual lease requirements during the period of the lease, not major infrastructure requirements. Do I know how much it I couldn't tell you how much it would cost to maintain comparable buildings, but it's, I guess that's part of the trade-off that council is making here in respect to gaining the advantage for this community of the presence of this workforce on a regular basis there and the opportunities that might be generated from that. And that was seen as a legitimate role for council to have by the government through the purchase of this property for this particular purpose. So there's a trade-off. I guess the negotiation and our non-negotiable was that we were keen to make sure that council did not end up purchasing buildings that were in disrepair and that they are brought up to a reasonable standard so that they are a community asset rather than council purchasing a site that we own forever or, well, you know, for however long, that were a major maintenance burden on council as opposed to some buildings that aren't actually able to be used. So that was the non-negotiable that we came to council with, and that was what was negotiated as part of the process. So I think personally think it's a brilliant outcome for Benambra, and obviously we need to go through this public process to check that people are happy with what was negotiated, but it's a use that has been approved through a public process already. The approval sits with the site, and I think this maximises our ability to gain what advantage we can from this mine should it happen in the area.
Councillor Buckley, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. The history of the Benambra mine has been sort of rather hard to understand at times, you know, way back from the 60s or 50s when Western Mining went there. And most of the time the lease has been on-sold, mostly for a tax break for whatever mining company has moved in. And my question to you now is, have the mining company got all their required permits to start operating? This, the latest punters, if I could call them that are there at the moment.
Well, they have approved to proceed to get all of their approvals. They have all of their planning approvals, so all of their off-mine site approvals in place. That exists in the planning scheme. They are in the process of submitting their work plan approval, which is the mine site approval, and they have a number of requirements that they need to meet through that process yet. But in this case, because this opportunity came up now, despite the fact that they haven't got all their approvals and haven't necessarily made a decision to invest in construction of the mine at this time, they were still prepared to enter into this arrangement with us, and as part of the lease requirements, council will not be disadvantaged even if they don't proceed with the mine operation. So I don't know what that means in terms of how confident they are about the mine proceeding, but it means that they're serious about securing the infrastructure and the assets that need to make it work.
Follow-up question, Councillor Buckley?
Yeah, I'll just follow that up a bit. Well, you're telling me that even if the mine doesn't go ahead, that we won't be stuck with a liability like we have been with other things that I won't mention now. But, and it'll be an asset anyway, and it could be on-sold to the next punter if they don't have a go. You know, for the ongoing system of tax breaks for mining companies. It won't affect us in any way. That way we'll still get our money's worth, so to speak.
Well, if you look at the lease requirements, the exit arrangements basically mean that if they don't proceed with the mine, then the investment still has to happen in that site. And yes, it would become an asset of that mine project. So whether Copperchem proceed with it or not, it becomes part of the assets of the mine project. So it's secured for that purpose. In the meantime, the site is publicly owned and can be used for community purposes.
Well, we can't go wrong on this one, it seems. Not this one. Thank you.
No guarantees in life, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Pels.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just curious as to whether there's any heritage buildings or heritage issues on that site with regards to the building being such an old school.
Not officially, but I'm going to say that the original school building was built in 1907. I think I'm right. And it's actually a really quite a nice heritage building. So you would want to, do something that's in keeping with it. But no, there's no constraints on the site from a heritage perspective. There is some asbestos on the site, things like that we need to be conscious of. But there's been an old so we're not dealing with.
So with regards to the capital improvements that the Copperchem would be expected to take, they will be sensitive of heritage issues.
We're yet to determine exactly what those works will be, and there'll be a detailed assessment need to be done of what should be done as a priority to make the buildings more accessible, potentially more energy efficient, or at least have heaters. That would be good, and toilet facilities and things like that, because it's really there's not been much happen at the school site since the school closed. So there'll be a process of negotiating what works get done and also how community use occurs at the site as part of the next steps.
Is there any further questions? Councillor Toohey. So Councillor Toohey's moving the recommendation. Second, Councillor White. Sorry, I'll just get clarification. Councillor Buckley, were you seconding that motion?
What do you mean? See, he just beat me to it. I was just going to move the recommendation.
Okay, so the recommendation's been moved by Councillor Toohey and seconded by Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, thank you.
Speakers.
Look, I think this is a great thing to do for the community up there. I'm probably the most averse to us increasing our public land, but I do think the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages in this particular case, and I think it also will give the local community up there a bit of a focal point that they don't necessarily have, because we don't have any ownership of this land at all. So I'm more than happy to recommend this.
Councillor Buckley, as a seconder, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I hope your predictions and your forecast is somewhere near correct. But as I said before, we've had, it's been a tricky issue for a long, long time. So we can only look forward to the best result. So, thank you.
Are there any further speakers? Speaker against, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although I really do like the idea in principle, and I'm waiting for Mark's right of reply, so I'm sure it'll be good. I just feel like there's too many unknowns in costing repairs and maintenance, and I believe this, if we did retain this property, it would be difficult to on-sell. I'd prefer to see similar or even greater funds committed to a newer, low maintenance, purpose-built community facility in the Benambra area. I think that would be a better deal in the long run.
Councillor Roberts. Any further speakers? Councillor White. Speaking for.
I would like to speak for the motion. I think it's just it's important that we show these remote communities council's commitment to their ongoing support, and in the future we may see CWA or a knitting group or perhaps the bush nurse or something using these facilities, and I think it's a good idea to have them available because the community of Benambra is only small, and it's a long way from Bairnsdale, and I just think it is good that council is supporting them in this way. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor White. Councillor Pell's speaking for or against?
Yes, speaking for. Look, I'm excited about this move because to me it may be the benchmark of this project moving forward, and the encouragement for the community up there I think is great. So even if it doesn't get off the ground, it's still a facility that is very usable in that community. They are short of community buildings. It's a great hall. I know they've used it for a long time now, and for it to be not in council hands is really important. That it stays in council hands in the fact that it can be still utilised in the best interest of the people up there. So I'm encouraged by this. I think it's a great sign that there may be further more excitement to come in that area.
Any further speakers? Councillor Reeves, speaking for or against?
Absolutely, yep, sure. Look, we do have a bit of a toehold up there. We've got our community house, and the community of Benambra have been shown to be amazing community members with the cooperative that's running the store up at Benambra and took it over a number of years ago. So there's a long history of good use and care of community assets. Look, while it's ambitious to think that we could build a brand new purpose-built facility, that's not going to happen. And we have a very beautiful heritage Bastow designed. So the government architect at the time, Federation, was Bastow, and that building is a great representation of his architecture at that particular time. I think it's ambitious to think, Councillor Peltz, I'd like to think that this is going to actually progress the Stockman mine, or as it's Copperchem now, but I suspect that it might be a board decision somewhere in Southeast Asia and copper price that actually dictates whether they proceed. However, I'm sure that the company will need these little pieces in place to actually progress and prosecute their applications. And this is one way we can further and improve the social and economic benefits for our community of this particular project.
Any further speakers?
I'm the only one left.
So is that an indication that you would like to speak? Speaking for it, Councillor Ellis? Speaking
yes,
for it.
I would, and I hadn't intended to because everyone else is saying what I'm thinking. I've discussed the matter with Councillor Robertson, had some empathy for his position, but it's a win situation for the community, it's a win situation for the mining group. It maintains a strong community footprint into the long term. You know, this is not a short-term decision, it's a long-term decision, and as time goes past, I'm sure the community will see the benefits of council acquiring another asset. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Any further speakers? Councillor O'Connell.
I know. Look, I'd just like to concur with my fellow colleagues that this is a positive move for the Benambra community, and hopefully Councillor Peltz is on the money and that things might progress. But yes, well done, and it's good work. Thank you.
So, Councillor Tui, I'll give you the opportunity if you'd like to close the debate, but before I do that, I'd like to thank the staff for negotiating on behalf of Council as we asked them to do that. Thank you very much.
Just again, a community facility that, as I understand, they do use it somewhat now already. Hopefully, it will be refurbished and kept with the same style, and the community will get further benefit out of it. So I think that's a win for all East Gippslanders, but the Benambra people particularly.
Thank you, Councillor Tui. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Against?
think
You left your arm up too long, councillor.
I think
I did say earlier on.
So we'll just do that again for just for a bit of exercise. All those in favour? Against? 8-1. Thank you. We item 6. Is there any urgent business, Mr. CEO?
None, Mr Mayor.
Before we move into the confidential business part of our agenda, I did mean to talk about the statistics since we've been recording these meetings and broadcasting live. Our first meeting last month had 45 viewers. Since then, because it's archived, there's been 457 views of that first meeting. So to David and your team, thank you for making this all happen and being able to open up these meetings to our whole Shire. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, while you're with us on that topic, I'm just going to speak out of order here by saying that the Chamber at Orbost were also very excited by the weekly updates that are available on YouTube and talking up the streetscape revamp in Orbost as well. So, and yes, your presence on those videos were very welcome and very noted, so they've been distributed widely around Orbost too.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. We do have a up to our confidential part of our agenda now. Do I need a motion? Do I have a mover for?
Mr Mayor, I move that we move into in camera because the next section I'm trying to find what it is I'm supposed to read. Yeah, this is it. Thank you. What Councillor Pelt said.
Brackets
Like
2,
me to
brackets
say-
D, the local government, you got it? Act 1989 to consider items 7.1 and 7.2 as these items relate to contractual matters.
So it's been moved by Councillor Pels and seconded Councillor Reeves. All those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Thank you.